Town Council public forum is open at 6:46. We have a number of speakers tonight. Please keep it to 3 minutes. First is Paul Tavares. 3 minutes. Paul, please state your name and your address, please.
Absolutely. Good evening. Paul Tavares, 1372 South Avenue, 59-year resident. I'm here to speak for those that aren't here, that hopefully will be, as far as the decision on where to place the splash playground. I understand that the mayor is in favor of it, and that's laudable. But what needs to be done to make this fully transparent is for an opportunity for those in that area to come out and have a voice of where they want the park located. Now, I know there's a push to have it at Juliet Low. I saw the plans, but there's also plans for the one at Johnson, which I think is in a more conducive area. Juliet Low is located on the corner of Wood End and Sedgwick. Very busy place. I saw the plans, and it was severely squeezed where that park would be located. Also, that park will be having access to those that want to have a picnic, which alcohol will be able to be served. I don't think that's conducive to have children amongst that kind of just in that area. Being an old fireman, I can tell you a lot of stories about children being around dangerous intersections and also people under the influence. It just makes plain old-fashioned horse sense to have the people have a choice of where the park is located. It's about time something like that is done in my section of town. Like I said, it's laudable, but you did it with the dog park and you did it with Longbrook. Let's be consistent. Let's have a forum where the public has a chance to say where they want it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tavares. Next speaker is Tina Manis. Tina, please come forward. Is Tina here? Tina, you're signed up twice. Yeah, once at the bottom. Okay. I'm taking you off the last number. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
3 minutes, Tina.
Got it.
And please identify where you live.
Tina Manis, 315 Fox Hill Road. I'm here on behalf of State Senator Dennis Bradley. I'd like to strongly urge the council to allow for a public forum to discuss the placement of Splash Park and the amended plan. And I'm speaking for Dennis right now. My constituents have a right to be heard and give input into the new amended plan. For far too long, brown and black people in this community have been dismissed. But ice rinks and dog parks have a dramatic 3-act play, and let's not even get into public forums on housing. The token nature of the approach to equitable representation here is extraordinary. One must conclude you have no input from minority communities because you do not value them and see them as worthy. Now there's a story from me. My mother used to tell me stories when she was in Catholic school about pagan babies. She went to Catholic school in the 50s, and the nuns there would unfurl these wonderful folders or milk cartons where children would throw spare change, dads would throw their pennies from their sandwiches and different things. I'm going to ask you to stop treating the South End like those pagan baby folders. Stop throwing spare change at them and the leftovers. The state has fixed the issue. The delegation at the state has put forward an appropriations bill to completely fund the splash park as it was planned. The state will handle it. Please let the state handle it. Just look what happened when you all tried to do it last time. I'm sure Tide Harbor residents are still sweeping ash off the balconies from the fire at Shakespeare.
Thank you, Ms. Manis. Next speaker is Barbara Heimlich. Please come forward, Barbara, and state your name and where you live, and remember 3 minutes. Thank you.
Barbara Heimlich, 91 College Street. In reviewing tonight's agenda, I see that as a result of the Building Needs Committee meeting on February 4th, they approved plans for a splash pad at Juliet Low Park. In July 2018, the splash pad for the South End was discussed at great lengths. And this is a direct quote from meeting minutes. And for newspaper article. Town hall officials say it would be dangerous and foolhardy to proceed without a study which would determine things like traffic flow, water consumption, bathroom facilities, parking, and a raft of other details. Planning mistakes, they note, could put children at risk by getting hit by a car, for example. From the very beginning, the South End Splash Park location was targeted to be at or near the Stratford Academy and Victoria Soto School campuses. The two schools are adjacent to each other and centrally located in the 3rd District. Another possible location suggested was Juliet Low Park on Wood End Road, a few blocks away, though it never gained traction. As those of you who know Juliet Low Park, this is a very small park used by residents for picnics and barbecues. Town Hall has the money in place for a new splash park. About $280,000 in bonding has already been okayed, and there is a $50,000 planning grant that's been approved. The council approved the funding for the splash park last May, even though it wasn't in Mayor Hoydick's original fiscal year budget. Has there in fact been a feasibility study done? What were the results of the study? Did it compare Johnson Soto schools against Juliet Low Park? Why hasn't that information been released to the taxpayers? Were there public hearings where residents were polled on what they wanted? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Heimlich. The next speaker is Linda Palermo. Linda, please come forward. State your name and where you live, and remember 3 minutes. Thank you.
Linda Palermo, 46 Fort Place. I haven't been to meetings for a while because of personal issues, but I need to know and have some information regarding what the committee is doing. I need to know, does the committee intend to have public input into the project that they're trying to do at Shakespeare? I believe we have a right to know. It was ours first. And then with regard to a park, I understand they're trying to put down, I believe in the South End. I just want to remind, there was a park put down there by the so-called cat lady. She worked very hard on that project, and she got very little recognition as a result of it. And I think if people are going to come forward and do things for the town, they should have recognition. So I ask that the general public be considered in whatever projects are going to be done in the town of Stratford. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Palermo. The next speaker is Tim Bristol. Tim, please come forward and state where you live and remember 3 minutes, okay? Thanks.
Okay. Hi, my name is Tim Bristol. I live at 9 Ridge Road. I'd like to ask the town council to allow a public input for the local residents regarding the splash park at Juliet Low Park. Allowing public forum where taxpayers can see the plans and provide feedback to the architects before the committee votes would be in the town's best interest. I've only been a resident of Stratford for a year, but I'm a strong believer in transparency in government, especially when it comes to projects like this. I echo the sentiments of the previous speakers that this park may not be an appropriate spot for the splash pad, and alternate sites need to be considered. And public input needs to be considered, especially when it comes, especially to the residents in the district for that park. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bristol. The next speaker is Mr. Boyd, William Boyd. Please come forward and identify yourself and where you live in 3 minutes. Thank you. I'd just like to say hello to Chloe. She's my granddaughter's best friend, or one of her best friends. Thank you, Chloe, for coming.
Yeah, I brought her for armament. Hi, I'm William Michael Boyd. I'm here with my daughter, Chloe, and we live adjacent to Juliet Low Park. So when I heard that they were planning a splash pad at Juliet Low Park, obviously I would be concerned for a couple reasons. There are 52,000 people here in Stratford, give or take a few. My daughter and I are two of those 52,000. We feel that we are equal to every other resident in this town, and it's kind of odd to us, or me myself, to feel like something would happen that I would have no idea about that's literally on the other side of my driveway. That a project of this magnitude or of that magnitude would be there, and I wouldn't know about it until Saturday afternoon when it's literally on the other side of my driveway. So Longbrook Park, Dog Park, Roosevelt Park, any other thing that would happen in any other aspect of this town, the residents would have an idea of what's going on and would have public input and say so. So as being a South End resident, when I get my tax bill, it doesn't say South End. It says 681 Sedgwick Avenue, William Boyd. When I pay my sewer tax, there's no region that I get a break or discount or charge extra. I'm an equal resident. So my question or my plea to the council is that you would consider the townspeople as equal and do things consistently throughout the town so that when you have a situation like this kind of park, show the impact it would have. Here's a couple of things. Birdseye Complex, Johnson House, Victoria Soul School, is a beautiful destination spot. In the summer, you have kids playing baseball. Wouldn't it be a great idea that little Johnny's playing baseball, mom can walk little Barbara over to the splash park while they're playing baseball, and it's a destination spot. The infrastructure's already there. There's already parking. There's already slow down lanes. There's already egress, ingress there. It's already set up. Also, the Parks and Recreation runs a summer camp at that park through the Board of Rec. Wouldn't it be a great idea that those kids can have that kind of advantage in the summer to have a splash park where they're already having camp? Juliet Low Park is not set up for that. As Mr. Tavares said, the traffic on Wood End and Sedgwick, that's a hot corner. You talk to any police officer, they'll tell you. There's a bus stop there, there's school bus stops, but there's also greater Bridgeport transit stops. So there's no breakdown lane, there's no area for people to turn in, and by putting a splash park there, you would actually chop up the park to put a park there. So I would hope that you consider our plea and give us a chance to speak. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. The next speaker is Peggy Barnish. Peggy, please come forward and identify yourself, where you live, and keep in mind 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. Am I too close? Sometimes I get too loud because I'm hard of hearing. I'm here to speak, Peggy Barnish, 85 Edgewood Street, Stratford. I'm here to speak about the Juliet Low Park. I don't live in that neighborhood. I understand the town owns the property, but it is a neighborhood park. It's more like Hyde Park than it is Longbrook, and I think the people in the neighborhood certainly should have a right to speak to each of you, or all of you as a group, as to what's best for them in the neighborhood. I know if it were my neighborhood, I would be here asking for the right to do that, and I don't understand why the council is not allowing that. Sadly, when I was thinking about it today, it reminds me of the water pollution plant. Now, everybody lived in this town long enough to know what a debacle that was when people didn't get a chance to make themselves heard. And I, for one, am too old. I'm trying to work 2 jobs in addition to my Social Security. I don't have the energy to go around looking for petitions and getting people to sign. I'm a reasonable person of reasonable intelligence. I expect the same of each of you. I certainly think that you have the right to decide ultimately, because that's what we elected you to do. But this is an age of transparency, we hope, not true of all of the politics in this country. But I'd like to think that Stratford is better than that. So I ask each of you to look into your minds and hearts to think how you would feel if this was your neighborhood park, and if you would want the right to say something to get everybody to listen to what would work best for you and your children in that neighborhood park. Call me a cockeyed optimist, but I'm going to hope that each of you will be reasonable people of better than reasonable intelligence. That's why we elected you. So Do what's right, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barnish. The next speaker is Dion Francis. Dion, please come forward. Identify yourself, where you live, and keep in mind 3 minutes. Everybody's been very great. Thank you on the time.
How you doing? My name is Dion Francis. I live at 216 Hamilton Avenue in Stratford. I've been living in Stratford my whole entire life. Born and bred Stratfordite. And I just want to address to the council that, and reiterate what Mr. Boyd said so most eloquently. I don't think I could top that, but I coached Pop Warner 15 years. I know most of the kids in this town. And I think, just like Mr. Boyd said, everybody needs a voice. We all live in Stratford. We all pay the same taxes. And we all should have a voice in what goes on in our neighborhoods. And it's for the simple fact that the dog park had a notification and a committee. Ice rink had a notification and a committee. Shakespeare even had a notification and a committee for them to find out what's going to go on with those properties and what to invest in them. I just want to know what changed in your course of action where now in the South End there's something being built and there is no notification or input from the community. And I would just sit here and ask you, please, give us a chance to put some input because this community is ours just as well as everybody else's, and our voices should be heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Francis. Mr. Wright, David Wright, please come forward and identify yourself.
Good evening, Council. My name is David Wright. I am a town employee, and I am here tonight speaking as a member of the governing board of the Stratford Historical Society at 967 Academy Hill. As we all collectively and individually deal in our own ways with the feelings of loss emanating from the recent burning of the American Shakespeare Festival Theater, it's important to remember that our town is 300 years old, and we've absorbed and synthesized many fires and even greater losses over those nearly 4 centuries. To name just a few of what in their own times were considered losses, which it would be a challenge to fully recover from, I cite the collapse of the first Washington Bridge, which fell in 1868 due to the steamship Monitor colliding with it. The Great Meadows Marsh Fire of 1893, which burned several cords of much-needed wood. Minor Smith's Fire of 1893. Minor Smith was the social gathering hall for the town in its day. The hurricane of 1893, which destroyed Oronoque School. The influenza epidemic of 1918, which sickened over 500 residents and claimed 20, including Rose Baldwin, a cherished nurse in town. The Center School Fire of 1921. Center School was home to Stratford High School students at that time. The Town Post Office Fire of 1934. The post office was located on Main Street and Selleck Place in 1934. The hurricane of 1938, which leveled many of the great elms on Elm Street and claimed 4 residents. The Roosevelt Forest Fire of 1947, in which 50 acres of the forest burned and it took over 10 hours to extinguish the flames. The demolition of the Old Town Hall in Stratford Center in 1956 to make way for I-95. But this town is more resilient than its buildings, bridges, marshes, and forests. This town is comprised of resilient citizens who, after each tragedy, rally to secure a better future for their town. After the darkest hours of the Revolutionary War, when the town and our country were in desperate need of leadership, William Samuel Johnson left Stratford for Philadelphia in 1787 to prepare the final draft of the Constitution of the United States. Tonight in this town council meeting, you, town council, will consider a resolution to rightfully honor Mr. Johnson. For this, we thank you, and especially you, Councilman O'Brien. Yet William Samuel Johnson was only one Stratford citizen who provided leadership during dark times. At this moment in the National Portrait Gallery in Washington, D.C. hangs a silhouette of Flora, a Stratford slave girl. The silhouette is one of a kind and graphically demonstrates to the world how the slave trade operated in New England. While we don't know much of Flora's life, her silhouette reminds us that from dark times we can emerge a stronger and more resilient town and country. And during Black History Month, we also wish to honor another Stratford slave, Jack Erebus, who was promised his freedom in return for fighting in the Revolutionary War in place of his master's son. When Jack returned from Distinguished Revolutionary War service, his master rescinded Jack's promise of freedom. Jack fled, ultimately securing legal representation, fought his case for manumission through the Connecticut State Supreme Court, and secured his freedom. As a result of Jack's court fight for freedom, it is estimated that over 300 other slaves who were promised their freedom for fighting in the Revolutionary War but not granted it upon their return from battle were also freed. You see, Stratford is made from amazing stock. The loss of the Shakespeare Theater will ultimately be the event from which Stratford's next internationally recognized leaders are forged. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Next, I'd ask Myra Albino to come forward. Albino, state your name and your address, please.
My name is Myrna Mills Albino, and I'm at 379A Paiute. I'm new to Stratford. I haven't yet gotten an opportunity to understand how things work. So but I was surprised when I heard about this splash pad. I admire the work that you do. And I admire the fact that you take on the responsibility for representing us. What I'm confused about, though, is why wasn't our voice taken into consideration when it came to the decision that's supposed to be made tonight? I understand we got 1 week's notice, and yet I'm seeing that people in the neighborhood never even knew that it was going to be there. I find that troubling. I'm not going to make assumptions as to why it is. I need to still learn. But I do hope you will listen to them, listen to me, listen to taxpayers who say, we have limited dollars. We want to make sure that however we use them in a way that is most effective. I like the idea of the park. I just hope that it's in the right place. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. The next speaker is Sonia Devitt. Sonia, please come forward and state where you live.
Sonia Devitt, excuse me, 545 Hilltop Drive in Stratford. I'm speaking also about the proposed splash pad and Juliet Low Park combination that I understand you're voting on this evening. And I was a little confused when I learned about it because I thought we had already decided that there would be a really nice splash park on the property there at Johnson and the Soto School. I would hate to see the facilities that were envisioned there should be shrunk down to fit into Juliet Low so that it has to serve several functions and would therefore limit activities, both the splash park and at the park, to be used simultaneously. I understand we originally thought that we would have a full-size splash park, and that therefore could accommodate easily elementary and physically challenged children. I am curious, and this is my big question. I'm really curious as to what has occasioned the change. What do you have in mind for the space that the larger splash park was to be in? It's not a part of town I live in, and maybe I've not been up on all the details. And without the Stratford Star anymore, it's hard for us to get good information from one end of town to the other. But I do urge you not to vote on something that, if it's already been approved to be a full-size park, and the plans for the Juliet Low Park had already been understood to be in place, that you not change that and try to put them together without public input, and so that we can see how the plans work and how the children will be safely accommodated. If it's money, our state legislators have already applied for funding for the splash park. So that's helpful. But my big concern is why what's driving this change? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Devitt. The last speaker is Stephanie Phillips. Stephanie, please come forward, and everybody knows Stephanie, just where you live, Steph.
Thank you very much. My name is Stephanie Phillips. For the record, my address is 41 Yarwood Street. I literally live walking distance from Juliet Low Park. Tonight, I want to confine my thoughts to two things. First of all, which is somewhat unexpected, but I'm extremely pleased. I want to thank David Wright and the Historical Society for recognizing our leadership and our history with Samuel Johnson and with Jack Soto for Black History Month. I'm very proud that the Historical Society has taken the lead to recognize that, and I hope you move forward with that as well. On the other side, I'm here to talk about Juliet Low, but I am going to confine my comments to strictly to ask this town council, because I see it is on your agenda for building needs, has passed it under 4.3.2, to not vote on it tonight, to delay it, and to allow our council members or members of the public and the administration to work together, to come together with a plan that the public will be happy with. I'm not making comment whether the plan is good, bad, there's a lot of history to it. We can go through that later. But mostly, I do agree that we did the right thing when we did the ballpark. We did the right thing with Lord Longbrook. We did the right thing when we allow the public to have input. And I believe everyone tonight has been extremely respectful to ask your indulgence to allow more time before you vote for the public to talk directly to the architects, give some feedback, allow them to share their thoughts, and then come back to you with a plan, even if it goes back to building needs, and be able to give you some feedback. That is strictly what I look at things from a town-wide perspective. If we don't do it here, this sets a precedent to any other neighborhood in town, not just in the South End, North End, but I don't care if it was in District 9, District 7, District 10. Every district, every area, every neighborhood should have the opportunity to talk and review what we do with our public spaces and our tax dollars. That is just a general right that I look for every counselor to do. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips. At this time, I'll close the meeting at 7:14. At 8